And now I think it's going to ask you for permission to be recorded. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Truong, and I'm here with Karen. And today we will be talking about AI and your assignments in your class for this coming academic year. We have a lot of material to cover, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we stay very practical and very relevant. And so we'll try to set some time throughout to answer your questions and to make sure that we'll have a conversation. As I mentioned, this is being recorded and the recording will be available shortly after today, and then I'll email that out. We also have a link to today's presentation slides and a handout that we put together that will also be shared. So we'll definitely empower you with lots of resources, so you don't have to take a lot of notes or anything. If you want to just listen and kind of enjoy the experience. So Karen, do you have any opening words you want to say to our audience?
Thank you, everybody, for coming before our big kickoff meetings and other things. Hopefully it's timely for your syllabi and assignment guidelines. I know I'm doing this homework myself right now in light of AI. So thanks for being here today.
Yes. All right, so I know people are still coming in, but I'm going to go ahead and launch our poll. So this is a polling, a couple of questions that we have for you just to get a sense of who's in the audience today. So there are 3 questions that we're asking you to answer. So the first is, what is your general attitude towards artificial intelligence? So positive, neutral, or negative. The second question we are asking is, have you used the AI text generation tool like ChatGPT before? Again, this is anonymous, so there's no shame if you've never used it before. We want to get a sense of where you are in terms of your experience. And then finally, the third question is, are you aware that Canvas's plagiarism tool has an AI detection built in? And that's something that we gotten a lot of questions. So thank you for those who have submitted questions in the registration form. And so that's something that we will try to touch on a little bit today. So I'll give you all maybe another 10 seconds or so to respond. So this is there's no people come in, so I guess we will let them have a chance. So if you just joined us, welcome. We are just doing a quick polling of where you are at in terms of your AI experience and exposure. So go ahead and answer those questions. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'll close this right here. And so I'm going to share the results so you can kind of see where people are at. So most people are neutral, which is good. Now, neutral, it means you're malleable. Means that you are open to learning new things. So hopefully today's session will be helpful to you. Second question, have you used? So more people have used it than less, and so that's good. But it's still, 48%. That's still pretty high for those who have not used it before. And then the last question is, that's surprising that most people don't know that there is a AI tool, but it is a new feature, and we'll talk about that really quickly. Any comments about this, Karen?
Hey, Mike, can you scroll down in that audience? We can only see 1 and 2.
Oh, sorry. Is it not?
We can scroll down on our own screen.
Oh yeah, it's on your own screen. I don't control the scrolling, so you just kind of hover over that window.
Okay.
And down.
Yeah, I see it now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Karen, do you have any comments about the results of this polling?
I don't know if it's positive or negative to my audience, as I build goodwill with you today on this topic, but I put negative. I think it's partly just the workload feelings of today, right? As we're heading into work and it's demanding some real labor of us. But I think when you said malleable and open, yes, because I do use the tool myself. So I'm somewhere between those two.
Yes. Okay. All right. We will stop this sharing the results, and then we will now get to our content. So I need to reclaim some real estate on my window here. Right. Sorry, sometimes it takes me a couple of seconds to move things around. All right, so again, I want to remind you that this is being recorded. There's this presentation slide we'll share, and there's also a accompanying worksheet that we will share out. So you will have access to all this material, so you don't really need to take too many notes. So we'll start with this first really groundbreaking news, if you haven't heard it already. So there have been a lot written about what's happening in higher education or in education in general, especially this coming fall. So Ethan Mollick, he's a blogger, and I think he's from, I forget what school he's from, but he's written about this quite a bit. He calls it the homework apocalypse that's about to take place. And that was really the inspiration for us to do this workshop, because he mentions that there's just a lot of assignments currently that are out in higher ed or in education that are now GPT-able. You can basically feed it into machine, and the machine will do the work for you, and you just copy it back and submit it as an assignment. What's more even startling is a couple of days ago. Hold on a second. What's more startling is a couple of days ago, there was a study that came out from MIT that basically showed that the ChatGPT is able to complete the entire degree in computer science, in mathematics, and in engineering or something like that. It's not just one course or one assignment, but the entire degree. And of course, this is just very, very startling and shocking for many educators, and that's why I think today's topic is so relevant and so timely. So we hope that today will give you some really practical advice on how to address some of these issues. Obviously, we're not going to have a lot of time to do a lot of in-depth, but we'll hopefully give you enough tools to get you started. In terms of, I think, the disruption that's happening in higher ed, I think there are kind of three big things that we are looking at. One is what we're calling fake learning. We've heard of fake news and fake whatever, but I think fake learning is on the rise if it's not already here. There's this idea that this AI technology is promising students and learners shortcuts to an easy path to learning without really learning. It's the Googleization of learning. There's a book a couple of years back by Nicholas Carr called The Shallows, and basically he argued that what Google did was it made people think they know a lot, but really in reality they don't, because just Googling something doesn't make you an expert in that topic. In the same way, AI is making people think they're learning, but they're not, because writing a good prompt isn't the same thing as learning the actual content. A second kind of phenomenon that's happening is this really sense of product over process that it really deprives the students the opportunity to develop important skills like close reading, critical thinking, analytical thinking, because what they really get when they use computer is the final product, and they miss out on the whole development of the actual learning that goes behind that final product. And then finally, this idea of dehumanizing the learning process is that it really, there's no humans involved anymore in learning, with this machine. And I think learning is such a social human endeavor that if we take out humans out of this, it makes the whole experience just not as what it's intended to. Karen, I want you to give your input here.
Yes, thanks. So my opening thoughts on this too, just in kind of the philosophy around it or some of our framework, is partly to engage. Some of you were in sessions with me last spring where we probably need to engage our emotions a little bit about it. Like, how does this make me feel? This is it's for some of us threatening to what we've always done, or it's uncompensated labor as we revamp classes that we've taught that were successful or useful, or activities or assignments that we could give that we can grade swiftly. So it's a lot of disruption. And for me, how I've made myself connect with it is I am very concerned about this dehumanizing learning. I think more than ever, I'm spending a few weeks at the beginning of classes doing the connection building, and I'm teaching lectures on how writing is collaborative, learning is collaborative. so that we reconnect in a world of student disengagement that's so isolated. So humanizing the learning has always been kind of my approach to it too. So I don't know if we want the next slide too, Mike,
Yeah.
on some of my comments, but I just got back from my national conference on teaching writing, and I presented on this idea that, you know, anytime there's major disruptions, it's a chance to clarify our values. So if you're needing to find your pathway into engaging this and caring about it, and not just having it be like, I don't want to look, you know, that's how I was initially at AI stuff happening in my field. But if you're having a hard time, one of my way in was to go, okay, disruption brings clarity. Like when we all of a sudden had to isolate for, it was supposed to be 2 weeks, you know, through pandemic, we learned, what do we really care about? What's most important to us? AI, I feel for me, is making me go, what's most important to me in the classroom? What do I have to keep? What do I have to edit and revamp? And how can I do some of the things that I've always wished I would do to make my assignments more fun, more human, more engaged, more visible? So this, for me, really clarifying some of my values. That's my positive reframe on the work. And the other thing that I've really thought about is this idea of academic rigor, but especially I'm doing a research study, just submitting my IRB, a research study on how often we talk to our students about my old AI as academic integrity. That used to be my abbreviation. How do we talk more often about academic integrity? So my argument to my colleagues in my field, and that I want to just present today, my suggestion, is that we plan not just to cover our policy on syllabus day and for academic integrity, but because of AI, we cover it every assignment. And in light of that particular assignment, in what ways can you use AI on this task? Which ways can you not? That we really clarify it. So we have an example in the handout that we'll show you later of just how I'm making myself remember to talk about it, and how many ways can I have this conversation about academic integrity because of AI. So because it's more it's more effortless, easy access for students more than ever to just generate an assignment that isn't their own original work, I feel the need to increase the visibility and the amount of time we spend on it, and then also to not just cover it, but to truly teach it. So building into our assignments, my general revamp, and we'll give you really specific strategies, but my general revamp is to make sure that I'm teaching good decision-making, ethical decision-making, that I'm teaching them, well, what is your voice? Where is your voice in this assignment? So that's kind of my opening thoughts about it. Saying, engage your emotions on this, think about, acknowledge the labor you're doing as you adjust and revamp. In what ways is it going to motivate us and clarify our values a little bit? Academic integrity, it doesn't just happen in the background and we deal with it when problems come up, but to actively teach it because of this. And I'm hoping that when we talk about, Mike mentioned this idea of, we have become too product focused in a lot of ways, like just turn in your final assignment, but bringing the process to the forefront. So I know what tends to happen, my metaphor for it is students are doing things backstage or off camera. I'm bringing in, you'll see that on my ethics example assignment that we'll show you later, I'm making the process really visible, giving them credit for all stages, all their rehearsals, all the things they're doing on their own off stage that I used to not see in class. We're doing more of it in class together on stage. And and I'm giving them credit for doing it so that I see them personally develop it. So lastly, just my opening thoughts is humanizing our learning. For me, my other motivating thing to make me engage this, face it head on, and revamp things where I need to is that humanizing learning, I really do feel like that's our top distinction at APU. I taught here for 14 years, I've been gone for 8, and I'm back, and I felt called back to Christian higher ed, particularly APU, because we do that personal mentoring, that holistic education, and that I know you, student. I know where your family lives. I know where you're from, as much as we can in the size classes we have. And I know your voice on the page, or I know your voice on the thread in my online classes, mid-semester or so. I can tell which student wrote what most often. So that idea of humanizing our teaching and really getting to know them. So thank you for the hellos in the chat, everybody. Good to see you guys again too. So that's my framework. If you ever want to chat about this, I'll get the coffee, we can sit on Kruger Walk. But I do think there's some acknowledging of the fact that there's additional labor for us. It's really disruptive to our field. And we need to personally, individually find our pathways in to doing this big homework assignment that Mike and I are hoping to equip you in today.
Well, thank you, Karen. So I just added a comment in the chat. So if you have questions or throughout, just add it to the chat, and then we'll make sure we'll address it towards the end. Okay. All right. So thank you for Karen for that. And I have lots to say about that, but we need to keep moving. This next slide is just a reminder, really, about what role we play, what students' role should be, and what the AI role should be. And it's very basic, but I think it's so important as we venture into sort of this new world, this new age of AI. As faculty, we are the experts in the room. Now, we are the knowledge expert, we are the subject expert, we know what the field is that we're teaching. And so we need to continue to kind of lean into that, because that will allow us to sort of not lose our confidence in the process of everything that's happening. So our job really is to share, to curate, to model knowledge, skills, and for our students, because when you're teaching students how to be an accountant, it's more than just learning a theory. It's about who you are and how you think and how you go about in a particular issue or a problem. Similarly, for students, I mean, they are signing up to go to school, and particularly in this case at APU. And the implicit and the explicit proposal is that they're here to learn. And so hopefully we as the educators are reminding them, like when you use something like a tool, whether it's AI or whatever, to shortchange your learning experience, you are not helping yourself. And so I'm here as an instructor to hold you accountable for why you're here. And I think that's a very, very important reminder for our students, like, why are you here? And what my job is as an instructor to kind of reinforce that. So we want them to be competent professionals and productive citizens down the line, because finding that shortcut now is only going to harm them down the road as a professional. And then finally, what's the role of the AI? It's really, at the end of the day, an assistant. It's a tool that can help you as an instructor. We've done workshops in the spring on sort of how you can use this to kind of in improving your workflow or designing courses and things like that as an instructor, but it can also help students, in terms of what they're doing. And we'll give you examples of sort of how that can be integrated in a critical and meaningful way. So I think this is a quick, just a reminder about our roles. What are the differentiated capabilities of AI and humans? I think this is also important to clarify. AI is a computer, it's a machine, and it could do a lot of things. But in particular, I think these are kind of the three things that they are best at doing, and they will always outperform humans when it comes to these type of tasks. So things like repetitive or mundane tasks. When you're trying to do something over and over and over as a human, you'll get tired, you'll lose focus, but a machine can keep going and going and going. The data analysis and insight is also something a machine will do very well. Like nowadays, these AI tools, you can upload, 200-300 page documents, and it can process it in literally seconds, if not minutes, and you can then ask questions against the system. And this is something that we have talked about briefly, and we will talk more about in this coming semester. A way for you as a researcher or as a teacher, like if you're reading a lot for a particular project or something, and you just need to kind of get some sort of clarity over the big picture, this is maybe a great tool for you to use to do that kind of analysis and insight. And then finally, the risk assessment and prediction, meaning it does, it takes a lot of data, and then it can actually give you the sort of the analysis of the situation, but it also can kind of predict things, I mean, based on patterns and trends it sees. So something that very hard to do for humans, because, for us to amass just a large amount of data and to be able to process it and then to kind of come up with conclusions is very, very difficult. On the other side, I think as humans, we are still very creative. I mean, machines will never be as creative as humans, because humans created this machine. I mean, we're that creative. And so we will continue to kind of be the leading contender when it comes to creativity. And so we can't forget that. In terms of contextual understanding, humans have awareness of our situation, of our experience, of a particular place and time. A computer does not, unless you tell it to. And to write something so contextual in terms of a prompt for this for the system to give you something meaningful, it's just going to take a lot of work. And whereas a human, you know, they have all that and they can quickly process things in a way that a computer still cannot. And then finally, this idea of complex and ethical decision making. Machines will take what's there and it will spit out what they can analyze, but it's not going to be able to sort of get to a point where it's going to help you make a decision, especially when ethics are involved, because ethics may or may not be programmed into it. And if there's quote unquote poor ethics being programmed into it, it will actually give you a very poor result. And so I think those are things that I think are important to keep in mind. Did you have any comments, Karen, before I move on to our assignment makeover?
Yeah, I put it in the chat, but one of my favorite things that Mike will say when we talk about the ethics of this, even for our students, is like, we need to talk actively with our students about don't outsource your learning. You know, it's a great conversation to have with them, great little bumper sticker kind of idea in this moment. But I also think something that we talked about, Mike, when we were, you know, working through this idea was that, what was I going to tell you guys? That when, we need to decide like what task along these lines, this could save you some class time and save your students some work time. What task are you okay with AI doing for them? When we do our research paper, I'm actually okay with AI writing an introduction for them and then them editing it. So we're gonna do that in class because there's a real form. It's not a lot of personality depending on which, you know, area of academics you're writing for. So I am okay with them using AI because there's a new literacy to me that I think might be part of my job to teach them is how to write good prompts if you're going to use these tools. So if you're a marketing student and your boss is okay with you using marketing AI tools, you could, you know, that's something you could write and then fix up. I do think the AI provides for my classroom a lot of models of how to do things. Instead of using student examples, sometimes I use ChatGPT examples. So where I want them, they always have better content and ideas than ChatGPT does so far, but like they have a hard time with one of the assignments you'll see like rhetorical analysis, they couldn't get the form. I've never seen this. This is so prescribed, Dr. Lang, like what do I have to do? I can't just write whatever I want. I'm like, no, there's a form to this genre. So I show them the form because ChatGPT is great at that. But then I say, look how short these paragraphs are. Like there's nothing, there's no feeling here. There's no style here. And so sometimes I use it in their personal narratives. It's absolutely not allowed on that assignment. So I think part of what we're getting at here on including like these capabilities slides is this idea of think about what are you okay with your students using AI for and coach them in that. And then where are you like, no, we're not touching that here because you bring a really important strength to this that only human touch can do, only human heart and mind can do. So that's part of the why behind this, or maybe the practical use.
Thank you, Karen. So we're gonna now go into the practical part of our webinar, so the actual how-to. So we're going to first talk about a particular assignment that you may be doing, and then to identify sort of these different makeover options you have, and then finally we'll give you very, very practical strategies. So let's get started. So the 3 levels of makeover that we are presenting here today are we're using the metaphor of when you're doing a renovation at your house. Excuse me. So the first level is what we call cosmetic change. And the basic cosmetic change doesn't really involve any AI use in any meaningful way. The assignment basically is to retweak the assignment so that it will make it harder for a student to run it through an AI. It doesn't make it impossible. It just puts a couple more steps in their process. So it's like almost like, oh, you know what, all that work you have to go through to get to use the AI, might as well just do the assignment because it's faster doing it directly. So that's the cosmetic change. The second makeover option is what we're calling a minor revision. A minor revision is going to incorporate the use of AI into the assignment, but it's going to ask the students to do it in a very limited and a critical way, so that the assignment itself is leveraging the tool, the AI tool, but it's also mostly asking the students to do the the brunt of the work, but they're using the AI to kind of supplement, similar to what Karen just shared about the introduction. I mean, that's an example, a great example of a minor renovation. And then finally, the full use of AI is what we call the major overhaul. We will show you an example of how you can take a traditional assignment and completely redo the assignment so that it's incorporating the use of AI and it's utilizing what the AI does best, but at the same time, it's also asking students to do a little bit more, a deeper kind of dive in the typical assignment than they would normally. So we'll give you examples of each, and then we'll also give you the specific strategies for that. So this is just a quick overview, and then Karen and I will actually give you examples of from our own courses that we're redesigning for the AI sort of makeover. So the cosmetic change, one of the things about cosmetic change is it's going to ask you to strategies like make it more personal, make it more relevant, more recent, and then make it so that the computer may not have that knowledge. A lot of the systems currently, like ChatGPT in particular, it is only the information has is up to 2021, I believe, end of 21. So it does not have recent data as of January 2022 to now. And so if you ask about an event, let's say if you're asking them to comment on some recent event like last week or last month, it probably won't have much information on that, and it won't do as a good of a job in terms of its analysis. So that's sort of the cosmetic change, personal experiences, reflection. Example of the minor renovation is the language translation. So for some of you who may teach foreign language, this is a common thing you do. But if you don't currently use, let's say, literature from a different language, this is a great time to use it because the AI can translate it for the students, and they can then work with that foreign language text in a way that they've never done. So it really then expands the scope of the material. And then finally, the AI-driven projects, are going to be the ones that will allow you to really incorporate this. Do you have any comments about this before I move on to the strategies, Karen?
I thought you were asking everybody. Yes, what I was going to say here is, I just wanted to quickly mention for the sake of time, but I listened to one research study out of Gonzaga where a savvy writing professor turned his whole first year writing class into the major overhaul. They had to use AI for all their writing, and finding this, if you're interested in that too, I can send it to you guys as some of his results. But the major finding was that many of them didn't like it. They didn't like AI. They said things like, it took my voice away from me. It said things the way I would never say them. And that it was more work to come up with a better prompt to actually meet the assignment that my professor had given me. I had to work too hard to outsmart the prompt. I wish I could have just written it myself. So I think we assume students just love this, and a lot of us just see it as a cheating tool. And I think what Mike is showing us here on the minor renovations and overhauls is that some fields will use it. And I don't know if you said it, Mike, at the beginning, but when the machine passed the degree, it earned a B overall. And so it's also successful. I think sometimes we decide I'm going to know that this is AI or it's not. But we have to be strategic. We have to be more mindful and savvy. So I'm really applying that shrewd as serpents idea from scripture and innocent as doves, assuming the best of my students, that they want to be learners. They're here to learn. They want to pull from me, but I'm also going to build in a little bit of guidance in some guardrails seems to be a trendy word right now, but some guardrails around what they're doing, and just saying, hey, I'm watching, or hey, I'm mindful of this. I'm not in the dark about what's available to you. So I think the other thing might be, back to my emotions idea, but we've always had to manage this a little bit, copy and pasting from a memoir, copying and pasting from their ChatGPT output. We've always had to coach them in plagiarism, so it's not that different. It's just a new version of being savvy about how we're doing it. And sometimes using AI in the classroom really shows them that you are engaging it and that you're not just pretending it's not there, or that they know something you don't know. I hate that feeling as a parent or a professor. So.
All right, so we're gonna speed through the next 3 slides because there's just a lot of material, and we want to get to the actual example so that we can show you how we are applying these strategies. So the first 6 strategies are these. So I'll let Karen take the lead on talking through some of them.
Yeah, so we are throwing a lot at you, and so we don't want to do information overload, but I think because we have so many different areas, these can be useful to you. Like we said, the recent weeks, or even depending on the tool, they haven't caught up to the content that's on the internet. So I pull examples from the headlines that day for us to analyze, or they have to, use a current event that is happening right now or issues. So there's that. You're going to see a lot in the resources on the handout on using personal application or opinions, and ChatGPT can write a version of that, but I still think there's something that we're hoping, assuming the best of our students, there's a little bit of a gut check for them. Like, do I want this machine to speak for my personal tastes and preferences and values? So adding in some of that, and then like, what quote or example or image in the textbook caught your attention? So making it like, hey, what stood out to you questions that I think have always been good pedagogy. I've had for a long time, I've asked students to do screenshots of their primary sources with anything that they source. So my field has been big for a while. It's a big claim, but trying to plagiarism proof our assignments, like the way we write assignments and writing studies. So I have always asked students to screenshot it, not just give me a link so that I can look at it quickly. And so Google Docs, this is one that I'm relying on heavily, and Mike just taught me how to make it more accessible to submit in Canvas. But you can do version history, and you can see their drafting process. So I did it myself on redrafting an assignment and watched how it went down, and it gives you timestamps. You can tell if a big swath of material has been dropped in. Okay, and so you can watch the real-time composing or creating of an assignment. I don't plan on reading every one of these, but I use it as a spot check, or I use it as, because the detector machines, I'm using like maybe old-fashioned terms, but the detection software, I think we get a lot of false positives, and I fear more hindering my relationship with the learner in my classroom and accusing them. But when you get a red flag feeling, or you're like looking at the diction or the ideas, you're like, this has nothing to do with our class, or whatever alerts you, that's when I will be using the history. So I'm now requiring students, anything they write, to turn it in Google Docs, because I can look at their history, especially major assignments. Timestamps from lecture videos sounds extra spy games of us professors. But if you post a video, or they watch a video, they have to, when they quote it or reference an idea, put a timestamp from that moment. So this really is, to me, a little bit more of the policing side of things. But we say, for such a time as this, you guys, we're going to encourage you to have integrity on this, and to show me that you read it. You didn't just punch this into ChatGPT. So we already said number 6 for designated sections also, but yeah, so just engaging the elephant in the room. Somehow for me, it feels like there's a dynamic of promoting honesty among us all and transparency among us all. So those are the first 6 strategies. Am I the next one's also?
Go for it.
Okay. We've talked about number 7, make it really clear in designated sections or elements of the assignment, captions for whatever they've created or something like that. This one is a really interesting one. I think there are a lot of tools out there. I'm giving Mike a public assignment here for us to find it, but I just noticed like a new option that people are peddling on faster ways for students to speak out their responses. I think this is especially good for like faith integration discussion boards. When I'm teaching online, I'd really love to hear what the student has to say instead of just reading it. So using video responses, I'm actually doing in a writing course an oral midterm exam, and I've done them well before AI. I've done them for a decade. It saves on grading load, and then students go, I've never studied more for an exam. Okay, so there's ideas there about video recordings. I really like this one. I've used it for assignments where they're like writing on location, or they're having to make contact with a site or an idea or do research, but have students take a photo with them in it and say what they were doing. So I'm even doing photo essays for writing process this year, where they take photos of what they do. Like, here's my writing ritual. Here's where I am when I'm doing this. Here's what happened. And it's only for me. I don't have them put it on a thread, but using images is a quick way to submit and reflect on their learning in different ways. So a lot of you already do these things, drawing diagrams, charting out a concept. I had students create an Instagram post or a TikTok video to talk about what is academic discourse. And that was, they said, their favorite assignment of the semester when I did that at Santa Clara the last couple of quarters. I'm trying to bring that liveliness back. 3D models of a concept, like I think Mike said he just hands them Play-Doh. Is that right in your class, Mike?
Or they just use whatever home whole household materials they have, Play-Doh, little sticks, and yeah.
Yeah, and these are the things I think Joe Bentz is in here. I remember him talking about Barbie dolls in the classroom and other things. Like, to me, this is someone like, let's make class more fun. Writing is so hard, learning is hard. They've got 5 managers in their classes. So anything we can do that gets us out of digital spaces a little bit. I was reading about students saying, hey, we've come back in person, but my professor still does everything on Canvas. And it's as if I'm in an online class. And so I know we built that world, we built those small empires, but I'm like, ooh, that feels a little convicting to me. I'm pulling out of those spaces and doing more hard copies and doing more physical activities in the classroom this year. So ask students to document and cite their use of AI. Somebody earlier, Jenna asked Mike for how to cite, and I know we had that resource that you put together in the spring. So we can link some of that, or there's archives via the Mike's office and some of our pages. So he knows these things, where these tools exist, but I actually need to get that myself and drop it into my syllabus before I post it. So asking students to document them, how they used it, and how they integrated it. So these are more practical ways, whatever level of cosmetic overhaul you're doing there.
All right, and then we'll keep moving because we still have our examples to show.
Yeah.
So then the last 4 strategies, and there are gazillion strategies we could have presented, but these are kind of the most relevant ones. So do we, I don't know, do you have any comments on this? I guess a lot of these are now getting to sort of the major overhaul. Basically, we're now getting to a point where we're asking students to use the tool for different purposes of the assignment. Like, for example, number 13, when they do use the tool to generate some content, we now ask them to actually find the sources to support that content. Depending on the tool you're using, like ChatGPT is the most common one, it doesn't necessarily give you source like citations of where they're getting the information. And so that's where you can ask students to go the extra effort. Okay, here's what you got from the machine, go and find the support for what was the result of this. So that's kind of like really leveraging the students' research skills. Number 14, ask students to use AI to complete the assignment and then ask them to critique the AI's work. Again, it's a way to leverage their use of the tool, but now you're adding a layer of students, and now it's sort of this meta-analysis that's happening. It's like Karen was saying, that it's good to teach them how to do rhetorical analysis on their own, but now how are they going to actually analyze a writing of a machine? And that's another level of skill I think that's important to develop, because it's sort of the same process when you're analyzing text. Whoever's created that text, it's the same kind of process you go through in terms of how you take apart a text, how do you understand what it means by this phrase, and so on. And then I guess ask students to submit their own work to AI for feedback. That's something I may try this fall. They write something and then they ask the machine to give them feedback, and then to improve upon it if they want to. I mean, that's again another layer of things that you may ask them to do. But
yeah, like I was going to remember to take note on this. I don't know if anyone in the group has heard of that. Professors are using this to give feedback to student writers, and so they're trying to manage grading load, or to the same old things that we're always coaching them on if they're newer, emerging writers and thinkers. But there is an ethical issue there for you're using your students' writing to train AI. So I think most of them you can toggle in unselect that AI is using this to continue to train AI. I would do that. I don't know what kind of FERPA issues schools are going to run into when we're sharing students' work, but I think a lot of my colleagues have not thought about that. But people do use that to give feedback. I'd much rather allow the student to do that as an option in class if they want to, or on their own, and point that toggle button out to them that they could keep the machine from like using it to train itself.
Yeah.
I keep saying machine. I'm gonna stick with it.
Yeah, machine. We'll just say machine. It is the machine. All right. So we're going to now dive into the specific examples for each of the levels of makeover. So my first one comes from OpSci 534. And this is David. I see David here. He's the chair of that department. And so David, I haven't talked to you about this, but I'm doing this coming fall. So this is a basic weekly discussion prompt that is in the course. So op side 534 is about leading change, how to lead change in an organization. So this is the prompt that I used to have in this course. This is a weekly discussion prompt, so it's, and I don't have all the context to it because if I paste the whole assignment, it's too long, and I just wanted to cut and paste the most important part and show you what I made changes to. So in the past, what I've done is ask them to write a 300-word response to a video they watched. And this video is about taking the Palkinic perspective, and it's about how to connect to systems thinking, and it's also asking them to apply it to their home or their workplace. The change I've made, my makeover, my cosmetic changes, now I'm asking everyone to just do a 3-minute recording. This is one of those strategies. They can still generate the response on the AI tool and read it out loud, but then it becomes more mechanical and robotic as opposed to just them responding. So that's one thing I made. The other is I started tweaking the actual prompt itself. So my new prompt is explain one new thing you learned from the video. This is, again, another strategy about asking them about their personal sort of take or personal opinion about it, and then provide the timestamp of the concept you mentioned in the comment section. So when they say, well, I really like when Yuri was talking about what it means to take the Balkan perspective doing this thing, I want them to then give me a timestamp in the video where they got that idea. This is that extra effort, that process that Karen and I have been talking about. Like, we want them to show their work, basically. When you refer to something in the video, where was it in the video? So that when I'm an instructor and I want to actually see if you actually did the work, you watched it yourself, or did you let the AI watch it and do the response for you? This is where they have to actually then go and find that part in the video. And if the last thing I changed was to draw a diagram or a chart connecting Yuri's concept of the balcony perspective to a systems thinking, and explain that. Again, this is it's still, I would say it's almost not possible right now with the current version of the AI to do this. And so it's gonna take some work, and the students have to now think outside the box. That they're not just writing or responding verbally or in text, but they now have to kind of use their other side of the brain to draw out something and connect it. And this is where the part of our intention today is to not just prevent students from sort of taking the easy way out, but now we want to deepen their learning. And I think this is where we can really deepen their learning in a way that we've never done before. But because of the technology, we actually have the opportunity to now help them to do more with their assignments than before. So that's my example. I'm going to go to Karen.
Yeah, and we've had a few questions come in, Mike. I'm kind of tracking them. We thought we could save them for the end, but I've responded to some people too.
Okay.
So I already mentioned my rhetorical analysis assignment. Here's one of the things I thought might be important to today when we're thinking of like, what am I deliberating over as I make these changes? If you go in to do this yourself, I am going to have to give up some things that I've always loved, some kind of precious things to me, as I adapt and maybe make it a little more AI cheating proofed. In my field, we love to, the hope is probably a lot of you, let students study what they want to study, let them write about what they want to write about, find a personal connection and bring it into this moment. I'm actually having to give that up a little bit on revamping this, because I allowed students to do a rhetorical analysis. We studied how pop culture is an academic, like anything is academic when you want to study it. So we used this project to do that. And so they were doing Taylor Swift songs, of course, lots of academics are doing that, down to like Bad Bunny videos, people, influencers they follow, who's the voice in my head, I want to analyze it. So lots of very like unique to them. I'm not going to do that this semester because it's just too easy for them to generate something I don't know about. What I'm doing when you look at the assignment is, I'm looking at what you can see here in this part of it. A pop culture artifact is what we call them, but I'm going to give them a curated collection. So I am thinking about this a lot. Like if I'm giving any assignment, I'm going to say, here's 2 sources you have to include, because that's one way to thwart AI. So I curate that. I'm going to say, you get to analyze from these 7 images and this moment in media, okay, or this moment in pop culture right now that just happened. So I'm going to put these, I'm kind of gathering them right now, put it together. So I curate what they're going to write about or talk about or do the project on. or they can choose from the last 2 weeks of work for the topic of their project, okay? So this is one way that I think could probably apply to a lot of you. The other thing that I do is I always include, I'm looking at what's the difference between my old and new assignment, yeah. The other thing I always do is a post, right, where they reflect on things. So I'm adding a lot more about academic integrity choices. What did you do to do that? But also on this one, what I decided to do was, I often have them do this in speeches because they can almost accidentally do great things in public speaking. And I'm like, great job. They're like, oh, I didn't know I was doing that, you know? And that's part of learning. But at the same time, I want them to know their rhetorical moves they're making and be able to name them. So the metacognition, the thinking about their thinking skill that we need as we mature as learners. So I have them do this 300-word rationale. Because of AI, I'm adding this. Apply the course instruction and reading to the crafting of this assignment. So they have to reference the course particularly, or the reading, and go, hey, what about this assignment is different than if I had never attended Dr. Lang's class? Where did I apply my learning from class? This is just, I don't always slow down to do it, but this is some of the deeper learning. And then I often pull up, like, I ask the student for permission, I put a few of them up the next class after grading these and say, here's what some of your classmates learned. What did you all learn? Why did we do this assignment? It didn't happen in isolation away from what we're doing physically in class together or online in class. You know, tell me how being in this class shaped this assignment and what you know more about your process, about this field, about this discourse community. So I make them give me a rationale, because that ChatGPT, I think, can't generate a rationale on assignment it already generated because it has not attended my class or read my textbook. So again, this would be some serious, if they want to cheat that hard, I'm almost like, I cannot help you, Lord help you. So if they want to work that hard to do the acrobatics around this, but so I'm adding the rationales, I'm making it on really recent things, and then I'm having them reflect on the choices they made in their post writes. And I'm going to spend almost more time engaging that and their voice than I am the product, the assignment itself. So this is a big shift of my labor efforts, like where I'm going to concentrate. I'm like practicing what I need to teach, or preaching what I need to teach here with you all today. And check with me at the end of the semester. Did you do it, Karen? Because we tend to go back into our own old, well-worn patterns of teaching what school was like when we were there. And I can't even go into a well-worn pattern of teaching like I did last spring, because I know better now. I know I have to do something differently. So that's my example of, I guess it's a minor renovation. It feels big, Mike, it feels big. So. Yeah.
All right, and then the last example is this major overhaul. So this actually took some time for me to think through, and so this comes from the higher ed doctoral degree program, and the assignment that I used to give, and I'm not teaching this course this year, so it'll be a year or so before I teach it again, or I might teach it again. But this is how I would change it. So the assignment before was to ask them to do a higher ed scan. Just to give you some context, the students in this course are going to be sort of future higher ed administrators and leaders. You know, they're going to be presidents and vice presidents and sort of leaders in higher ed. And one of the things that I want to kind of communicate or help them develop is this understanding of the field as a whole. And so in the past, I've asked them to do this assignment, you know, which is asking them to kind of look out on all that is happening in higher ed and to understand the broader kind of landscape of what's happening. So I would ask them to, you know, look at the trends, look at the drivers, and look at sort of and analyze it. And they would have to actually at the end put together a report that summarizes their learning, you know, from all the things that they're doing. Which is, I think, a very traditional, quote unquote, research paper. Like you ask them to go out and do research, analyze it, and then, you know, present it, kind of thing. So what I'm doing is I'm basically redoing the whole assignment. And the way I'm doing that is, so first of all, the first step I want them to do is actually to use the AI chatbot to surface these high-level trends, as opposed to like them as humans going about, you know, because now I think, again, the one thing that computers are good at is the big data analysis. I mean, the sort of machine learning is good at sort of like they consume gazillion gigabytes of data, and they are able to see the big picture in a way that humans cannot. And so that's where I'm leveraging the AI. So I'm going to ask them to actually use the AI to surface these top 10 trends in that's their first step, and to list them and to kind of to work through that. And then the second step, part of step one is first they surface it, but then they take that list and they modify it based on their additional research, because the machine may not get everything, or it may not get the recent things. And so it's not going to, like, for example, if you do it with ChatGPT, it's probably not going to surface AI as one of the top trends in higher ed, because, in 2011 and before, it just wasn't a big topic. And so that's one thing that they would need to do, is supplement and give some of the more recent updates, and then making sure that these are backed by real sources. So this is where I'm going to ask them, like, for every trend that you find, that the computer found, I want you to actually go out and find the source of that supports what you're looking at. So that's step one. I mean, again, that's, I would say, just as much work as it was before, but it's a different kind of work that instead of them coming up with the list, they now have the list to work with, and then they are supplementing that. Step two in this scanning report is that they now take what they have in step one, and then they're going to use the AI to discover potential drivers. So drivers are things that are causing these trends to happen in higher education. And again, it's using the machine to do the analysis. One of the things that we talked about, what the capabilities of AI is, it's really capable of doing large data analysis. And so you ask it to now understand the reason behind these trends, and it can actually do a fairly decent job, doing that kind of analysis. And so again, the human student will come back and supplement and to sort of modify what the AI results are. And then finally, they use the AI to generate the outcomes and additional research in step one, and then they prepare a 10-minute presentation. And so this is where before they would just submit the paper. And again, I have not known if they use the AI to generate the whole paper, but now I'm going to add an extra step for them to now present the material. And it's one of those things, it's going to put a little extra step in their process. And then it's going to make them sort of think about, like, do they really understand this topic enough to present in a very short kind of presentation? And then whenever possible, using AI to generate the images, the videos, and the slides. And by the way, this slide deck we have is actually generated by AI. We provided the content, and you can see how the design and the graphics and layout, it's actually AI generated. And that's why you can see the Made by Gamma. It's one of the tools that I used. But so again, it's leveraging AI at almost every stage of the assignment, so that the students are using what AI does best, but then they're supplementing or complementing that process with their sort of human skills and development of what it means to be a learner. So so with that, we do have tons of resources. So these are all links that we again, we'll share out the slides, and you'll be able to click and get to these links. Some of the comments throughout today's chat was asking about resources. So these are all the resources we've kind of developed over the last 6 months or so. And you can see the guide, and then the framework and methods that Karen developed for one of our workshops, and the others, so on and so forth.
Mike, do you mind giving me 1 minute on that example of making your academic integrity policies more visible each assignment?
Yes.
And I think I tracked all the other questions, and I'm happy to stay and brainstorm some things too. But one thing I just wanted to show you, instead of just tell you about it, was I have a narrative assignment, and it's my first one I give. So far I've revamped that one. And in the top matter kind of that we normally do, like, here's the learning goals, here's how this meets course goals, or here's the particulars of the assignment. I also included academic integrity considerations or something like that, particular to this assignment. I don't know if we have that one, Mike.
Yeah, I need to switch gear. Let's keep talking, and then I have to.
And so, and then what I also did at the end was in their reflection, they have to say, in what ways did you make sure your voice was primary in this assignment? And how did you intentionally, basically, I forget how I worded it right now, but I'm trying to ask them, and I'm going to talk about it more candidly in class. How did you decide to not cheat on this? You could have done this differently. And so just going ahead and having those transparent conversations with the students, and talking about it, not just like, oh, I covered it, I've got to move on, I've got so much to cover. I like Peanut McCoy often says we need to teach the students we have right now. And I think we've got to teach for the moment we have right now. So you can see on this assignment, it's a project. It's even more in detail because we're using it in dual enrollment. So I've gotten a lot of things out of my head onto the page. But I put this coaching. I called it coaching because that's what I really think it is, especially in a 100 level course. Our associate provost, Candy, yesterday told faculty, like, I think a lot of my plagiarism issues that I manage were unintentional. And so this is part of where we coach them on it and not just, bust them when it happens. But so I talked to them about how to avoid the temptation to cheat, like planning in time. What does collaboration mean for this assignment in particular? And I say, you have to choose every word, every verb has to be you. Nobody else gets to choose it. I make it really clear. And then I expected the final arrow there is to draft all your writing in Google Docs submissions so that I can view your history. So, it's kind of like just having a guard at a jewelry store up front, like, hey, don't be tempted to rob from us. Don't be tempted to do wrong. There's somebody watching. And I think it's going to thwart some behaviors we don't want to see in our students if they just know we're watching. There was more at the end of that too. Like down at the bottom, I highlighted some things. I've talked before to the group about this, but I am building in more contactful research. It's from my dissertation where they make contact with the assignment personally. So on this one, this is from Tom Alba's assignments. They interview a literacy sponsor and I asked them for sound bites of their interview and I asked them for their Q&A notes. And I say, I don't need them in detail. I just want to see some of your best questions you're going to use. So I'm giving them credit for process along the way is what I think this example really is. So the interview, the gathering, the drafting, the personal reflections, they're getting points for all that. And then at the very bottom is where I have my academic integrity questions, particular to AI, just trying to be more savvy about it. So these are, to me, some, pretty big renovations that I am doing just to go, gosh, I'm just not going to ignore it and let this stuff happen on my watch as much as I can. And that's it from me.
Okay, so we officially have 3 minutes left, but I'm okay staying on a little longer to answer some questions. And if you need to leave, thank you for coming. And we'll also, again, reminder, we'll share out the slides in the handout. But we've been answering some questions in the chat throughout, but I know there are probably lots of other questions. So at this point, if you want to ask a question, just raise your digital hand and then we will kind of go in that order. So I see Sam has his hands raised. So go ahead and unmute and go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you both so much for this. So I teach in a clinical psychology doctoral program, and I know we have our MSW program and our nursing program. So I would love to think with them. Any resources you both have would be fantastic, but think with them around sort of what are the unique factors when we think about AI in terms of, when we're trying to assess clinical skills. Obviously, so much of it is already done through role plays and through other kind of experiential learning type of things. But when we are asking for some sort of written assignment, whether it's a case conceptualization or even a clinical research paper, how we're gonna think about the AI aspect connected to that. So any thoughts you both have, I would really appreciate them. And I'm also going to try to reach out to, like I said, those clinical programs and see if we can get just a couple of conversations going about that.
I'll just say something real quick and maybe Karen has some response. I think in general, I mean, I know your discipline, every discipline is unique, but I think in general, there's value to taking time to explore what aspect of the course can be needs to be revamped and what aspects can stay the same. Because just because this new technology has come, that doesn't mean we have to redo everything. Like what they say, throw out the baby with the bathwater. There might be still very valuable things in your discipline, in your course that needs to continue the way it is, whereas other aspects can be, needs to be revamped. And so that's sort of maybe an easy way out, but I don't know if there's any thoughts, Karen, about.
No, my input self was to go, oh, I want to go back through my database with that in mind, like thinking of your field. I think maybe Mike and I could take that as a small assignment to go see what we can find, because there are people who are, rushing to be the voice on this in their fields, and putting things out there. So maybe we can look for some of that, but I think maybe this is one of those things where you have to press pause and maybe come back together on Zoom or with our departments and go, how are we facing this? Many of my friends who are at large universities over Christmas break last year were coming in a couple of days after Christmas to create the policies and the syllabus, because it's all broke over the new year. And so we might need to huddle up with our particular areas and think through this, because that is not an area that I work in, except for maybe I just always come back to that rationale, like, tell me, how did you apply the course content, in this moment? Because we know it and we're so close to it all the time. We live and breathe this. We never graduate. We keep coming back. And so I think, thinking about that for any of our classes is like, how do I know that they are different because they were in my class this semester, asynchronous or otherwise? That was the other question, Mike, that I thought was interesting, was, teaching 100% online in clinical applications. So if you have thoughts about that, because I know you do a lot of that, Mike.
Yeah, again, the assignment makeover is where, like, I teach mostly online courses, and I'd say a lot of it is asynchronous. I do have synchronous opportunities, but those are not quote unquote required. And so the way I'm going to have to kind of deal with this is to make sure that the assignments that I'm asking them to do is going to sort of take advantage of the capabilities of AI, as well as making sure that we're holding the students accountable to the actual learning we want them to do. And so I think hopefully, so today we kind of gave you some examples of how you can do that, kind of thread that needle to in the between, letting them sort of take advantage of the way the AI works, and then also continue to ask students to develop their skills in a meaningful way.
Kay has had her hand up.
Yeah, Kay, go ahead, Kay.
Oh, I was just hoping for a question an answer to the question I posted on the chat.
Yeah. About curating?
No,
Oh.
About our originality reports.
Oh, yes, that's okay. I have that. Let me go ahead and share my screen real quick so you can kind of see where that is. So this, I'm showing you, here, let me kind of go a step back. So if you have used the speed grader in Canvas, this is what the screen will look like. And then when you, on the right of that, you'll see the 8% little icon. And if you click on that, what will open is this page. This is where you would see the typical originality report. And you can see in this particular student, 8% of the content is found somewhere else online. And you can see right underneath that there's a new little indicator now. It says AI, and there's not much there. I mean, you can click on it and it will kind of explain to you what it is. But one caveat about this AI detection is that it's really not as mature as it can be. It's brand new. It's just been implemented in the last few weeks or not months, and there's still a lot of sort of false positives. Like, for example, we've heard a lot of cases where students using what's that, Grammarly as the tool where they're helping them fix their grammar and spelling, and that is now being detected by the machine as being, oh, that's AI writing, even though it's their writing. They're just using this kind of Grammarly tool to edit their paper. So I would say use that as just a rule of, like a little I don't know, quick check, not so much to say, okay, if this is like, I'd say if this is like over 50%, then yeah, I think you need to kind of look closer. But if it's anything under 50, it's probably, I don't know. That's just an arbitrary number. I don't know. Any thoughts, Karen, on this?
Yeah, and I saw your comment, Kay, too, about one way everybody did right away was to go, these aren't even real sources. I can look up a few and see. So the hallucinations, they call them, are these kind of made up sources. All of a sudden, it's giving my brother credit, who's not in my field at all, because we have the same last name. Mashing up 3 different sources. That's where I don't take the time to look it up. I have the students always provide their sources. It saves me time and it's not too much more work for them. But it is one way to look it up if you're not requiring that, but it is getting better at it too. So that's one of those things where I'm like, gosh, this is on the move. And so it's getting better and better at doing a good job on that. But that has been one way to notice. And I don't know if Mike said it when I was reading some of the comments, but it's also, the detectors are also flagging our English language learners as having cheated when it's truly their authentic writing, because they tend to write in really like simple or more mechanical ways in which they're learning a second or third or fourth language. Some of our students are very impressive in that. So that's another thing, is maybe just watch out when we approach a student about something and say, hey, why do you think I'm bringing you in about this? And see what they say. And then say, here are the results from the detection. You're not in trouble. I want to talk to you about this, or however you manage these plagiarism moments with students. But I'm planning on using a lot of the other things so that I don't always run those. I hope it's not just assuming that I'm managing students well on this front, but I think a lot of the other tools to me are more reliable on an interpersonal level, because I really don't want to have someone's turning point of exiting the university or otherwise, but be, this professor totally didn't believe me and I can't do anything right. Like, my first year students are very on edge about the transition to college writing. But at the same time, I get really fired up about academic integrity. And one person asked about Mike, syllabus, like quantifying these things for your particular setting. Yesterday, Mike and I were listening to the student services leadership on campus present to new faculty. And I was making the point that AP has had a history of some academic freedom when it comes to interpreting the academic integrity policies in your classroom. There's not like a one size fits all policy that we hammer down on students when things emerge. I feel like that's a little like, ooh, give us some more. And so Mike has things when I looked for Mike for my syllabus, I ended up drafting some of my own too. I need to find what we worked on last semester. But I really did quantify it, like one small offense, and here's what a small offense is this: you get coaching on it. Next offense is you get a 0 on the assignment. If it happens 3 times, you're out of the class and you fail. Like, you do not get to stay in our learning community. So it's something to take really seriously, because much of the research and higher chronicle articles talk about is an epidemic of cheating. The ethic for some students, I don't like to cast a negative narrative around students, but for some students, if I can get caught, if I can avoid getting caught, it's ethical. That the original question that came out to me around these conversations when we've been gathered in these Zoom meetings is professors saying, is it my job to make sure they don't cheat? And I think that's something we get to answer for ourselves. Like, at what level do I want to disrupt this, police it, engage it, and let them use it, and just know that it's all above board, because you can use AI in my class, and if you want coaching on your own original work, I'll coach you on that, So we're deciding our learning outcomes in our particular moment down to the detail in our rubrics of how we keep people accountable on this stuff. But catching a student, I don't feel like I want that to be my job, but in some ways we have to do it.
Yeah. And I just posted the AI use option language that you can use in your syllabus in the chat. So Evelyn, thank you for your patience. Please ask your questions.
Okay, I just want to remind everybody that the library's here and we're here to help. And so please include that in your syllabus, because I've already had experiences with some students who were working with ChatGPT, did not want to admit that they were. And they came and I think they were trying to use it in a positive way, but they couldn't find the sources. And so they would come to me and say something like, oh, I had this article, this information, and I don't know where I got it from. And they're backpedaling. And then pretty soon I realized they probably got it from ChatGPT. So I kind of turned it around and I'd say something like, oh, they have this new ChatGPT now where you can just put things in and things will pop up, but they don't always have accurate, citations. If you can't find this one, I can help you find some other articles on this particular topic. And so even for faculty, when you're doing your curation for your questions that you want to use, we can help you do that. And we can also help students when you get to the AI discussion at the end of, what did they do? What are the different things that they did? What librarian did they see? And what results did you get from using that source? Things like that. So I just wanted to remind you folks of that.
Thank you, Evelyn. Yes, the libraries, the librarians are here and they're here to help. And I know Dave has also been very helpful throughout our previous workshops. And I think, please utilize the expertise that they offer. All right. It's 10 minutes past our scheduled time, so we will officially close this session. But I'm available to stick around. I don't know if Karen is, to answer additional questions. But thank you again for coming today. We will be forwarding the slides and handout. I've also just put that in the chat. And thank you so much for your interest in this, and we hope to have more conversations in the future.